Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Jivan John.
And I'm Jyotsna Kumar. And on the show today, the United States and Iran say they have reached a peace agreement aimed at ending more than 3 months of conflict across West Asia. And the breakthrough came despite tensions sparked by an Israeli strike on Beirut that briefly threatened to derail the deal. A formal signing ceremony is scheduled for 19th of June in Switzerland. We'll get you more on that.
Also on World DNA, while this peace deal would end military operations and reopen the Strait of Hormuz, as the US expects, major issues still remain unresolved. Further negotiations are expected to focus on Iran's nuclear program, the original sticking point, its stockpile of enriched uranium, and the future of US sanctions as both sides work towards a broader settlement. There's lots to discuss. We'll have a special guest on this right here on World DNA. Let's start with the headlines first.
The US and Iran say they have reached an agreement to end the war. Both sides have agreed to stop fighting on all fronts, which also includes Israel and Lebanon. The official signing ceremony will be on 19th of June in Switzerland.
The US president says US has achieved peace with Iran, saying that the agreement will ultimately ensure that the Strait of Hormuz is permanently toll-free.
Iran confirms immediate and permanent end to the war and military operations on various fronts. Deputy Foreign Minister Qasem Gharibabadi says negotiations for a final deal will be held during a 60-day period.
Britain, France, Germany and Italy welcome the agreement to end the West Asia war, say they are prepared to lift sanctions imposed on Iran in response to clear, verifiable steps on its nuclear program.
President Donald Trump celebrates his 80th birthday with a cage fight on the White House lawn. Trump and UFC chief Dana White walked together from the Oval Office as fighter jets streaked overhead.
Oil prices fall about 4% after the US and Iran announced a peace agreement ending months of conflict. The deal includes reopening the Strait of Hormuz, easing concerns over global oil supplies. The US crude is trading at nearly $81 now, and Brent is at about $84 per barrel.
Missiles intercepted over Kiev as major attack targets Ukrainian capital. Mirror says 6 people wounded while a cathedral in the famed Orthodox complex caught fire after Russian strikes. Russian strikes in Kharkiv killed 5 rescue workers.
Violence breaks out on the sidelines of an anti-G7 demonstration taking place in Geneva. Cars set on fire as protesters march through the city center. Images show vehicles engulfed in flames while nearby buildings bear smashed windows and shards of broken glass litter the ground.
Deadly collision between 2 helicopters in Rio de Janeiro has killed 6 people. Among the dead were American singer Oliver Tree and Argentine YouTuber Gaspar Prim.
Prime Minister Modi arrives in Slovakia for the second leg of his 3-nation European tour, marking the first visit by an Indian Prime Minister to the country since it gained independence in 1993.
Japan score an 89th minute equalizer to rescue a point against the Netherlands to open their World Cup campaigns. The Japanese team fought back twice to secure a 2-2 draw against the Dutch side in Texas. Well, the big story today, the U.S. and Iran have agreed to a peace deal which will end the military operations on all fronts, including Lebanon.
Now, the initial announcement from mediator Pakistan was quickly confirmed by Washington and Tehran, and an official signing ceremony has been scheduled now for the 19th of June in Switzerland. In a post on his Truth Social network, the US president said that the Strait of Hormuz would reopen, US naval blockade would be removed after the planned signing of the deal on Friday, apparently contradicting an earlier statement that the crucial waterway would open immediately.
Now, Trump added that the deal will bring peace and security to the whole region. Soon after, Iran said that the newly announced agreement with the U.S. puts an immediate end to the country's war.
Now, Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Kazem Gharibabadi, in a televised comment, said that negotiations for a final deal will be held during a 60-day period, adding that Tehran would take its own measures in case of breaches from the other side.
This memorandum of understanding was reached despite our complete distrust of our enemies. We have no trust in the enemy. Our trust lies in our military strength, our diplomatic capabilities, and the support and unity of our own people.
The content of the agreement remains unclear. Iran's Mehr news agency reported that the U.S. will release $12 billion in frozen assets to Iran before the start of negotiations. It quoted a 14-point memorandum of understanding between the two nations, which it said stipulated the release of $24 billion in frozen Iranian assets during the 60-day negotiation period that begins after the MOU is signed.
Just hours before the deal was announced, Tehran had vowed to retaliate for an Israeli strike on Hezbollah in Beirut's suburbs, a move that threatened to derail the agreement.
Iran's military claimed it had humiliated the United States and Israel. In a statement issued after the deal was announced, it said that the two countries, which it described as its enemies, had no option but to accept defeat and surrender.
All right, for more on this, we're now being joined live by Colonel David B. DeRoches. He is a professor at the Thayer Marshall Institute and former Deputy Director for Peacekeeping in the Office of the Secretary of Defense. Colonel, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for making time. I just want to get your assessment. The key sticking points. Iran says they want to hold some autonomy over the Strait of Hormuz. Israel says they want to continue fighting Hezbollah in Lebanon. Do you feel the sticking points have been achieved? They've been resolved? What is leading to this signing on the 19th of June?
Well, honestly, I'm a little bit confused. I have Iranian interlocutors that I appear with on other networks, and what they're describing is something that I can't imagine President Trump has signed up to. I think that there's probably still some substantial difference in how things are interpreted. So, for example, if you look at Lebanon, Iran is kind of compelled by their ideology to say, oh yeah, Lebanon's included in this peace treaty, but Israel's not a signatory, the state of Lebanon is not a signatory. So I just don't see how that can function. The other thing that I've heard from some of my Iranian interlocutors is that there will be a gradual opening of the strait, that it takes time for Iran to set up procedures, and of course I don't think that's acceptable to President Trump, and it's really not a truthful statement. I mean, all they have to do is just stop threatening to attack ships that go through the Strait of Hormuz. So I think there's still a little bit of distance here. Part of this is I think both sides want to portray the other side as capitulating. This thing could still fall apart. And I think that we're more likely to get a general statement of agreement rather than an implementable truce with terms that are agreed upon and clear guardrails. I think those will still be fought over.
Of course, as you mentioned, Colonel, that of course there are sticking points that remains to be resolved, and we'll have to wait until Friday to see a fresh memorandum to see what has been resolved. But then even if that signing is done, does it mean that we're actually back to square one? We're back to the nuclear talks, we're back to the talks on enrichment. So according to you, is this actually a win for Trump?
It's not an unalloyed win. I mean, his detractors will say that he wasted a lot of money just to get to where he could have been in 2018. Trump's backers will say that the 2018 deal was fatally flawed, that Iran was probably moving towards the bomb, and that this will have more harsh conditions on Iran. But we honestly don't know. I mean, one other sticking point is Iranians have said that they will get 12 billion of their basically half of their frozen assets immediately. President Trump has said all along that he's not going to give money to Iran just for talks, that there has to be some action there. So there's still a lot that is unclear here, a lot that has to be defined. And I think there's going to be some kind of furious shuttle diplomacy. There may not be a sign. I think it's, there's a good possibility that there won't be a sign on the 19th as these issues are drawn out.
So you're saying that there is a chance there won't be a signing on the 19th because things can fall apart just in the matter of these next 4 days as well. But then you have that 60-day period when the Strait of Hormuz is gradually to be opened. That's again differing between the two sides. Those assets are to be gradually released to Iran. Again, that's grey between the two sides. Israel doesn't want to let up on Hezbollah in Lebanon. These next 60 days would be hinged on these next 4 days, which itself seems shaky.
Well, that's perhaps a little bit more negative than I would put it, but yeah.
All right.
I agree with you in general. I mean, look, the United States has said nothing about Israel and Lebanon. They clearly don't want Israel and Lebanon to be fighting right now. But if President Trump is told by the Israelis, look, we've located, the strike in South Lebanon killed a guy named Dakduk, who was a real bad hombre who executed 4 U.S. Army soldiers in Iraq. He's not going to break with Netanyahu over killing a guy like that. And at some point, if Israel perceives a threat to their security, they're going to take action. They don't care what the United States thinks. They'll make it up later. They're not party to this agreement, and Iran will betray them again. When they see that they have one of their interests at stake, like getting $12 billion of frozen assets. There's that. But I mean, President Trump tweeted out that the strait will be open immediately, and the Iranians say no, it's going to take time. Well, it's not going to take time. If the Iranians want it open, it can be open immediately. The 60 days is supposedly to come to a nuclear agreement, and I think Trump's vision is that as that agreement is implemented, which means uranium being downblended or removed from Iran, then they start to get funds. I think the Iranians are expecting to see money immediately upon signature. So there's a lot to be defined here, and it's almost like we have 2 different narratives that are from 2 different worlds. So I hope for the best, but I honestly don't see it right now.
And also, you mentioned Israel, the involvement of Israel. How do you assess that to be? Because for now, of course, Lebanon is another sticking point Iran has always focused on. At this moment, the war that was waged on Iran was together with Israel. And now, do you think that Israel will not play any role when it comes to a deal with Iran? Or U.S. is going to ensure that Israel, you need to listen to me when I go to a deal with Iran?
Well, I think that Israel has the ability, relations between the United States and Israel are generally pretty good. So, if President Trump calls up and says, look, this is a critical moment, I need you guys to back off, Israel will probably say fine, but they're not going to do it indefinitely. I mean, Israel is still recovering from the trauma of the October 7th attacks, and they have fantastic intelligence on Hezbollah. If they get a sense that, Hezbollah is massing rockets to fire on northern Israel and make it uninhabitable, they'll take action. And, they're not signatories to this. So they'll probably do their best to give President Trump a political win, but they're not going to compromise their own security for that. And they define their security and they protect their security in a broader and perhaps less out of proportion manner than the United States does.
Colonel, I wanted to ask you, do you see an irony here that this entire war ever since Feb 28th eventually led to Iran having an upper hand in the negotiations compared to where they were before Feb 28th, because Strait of Hormuz is also in play, they're demanding for Lebanon, and they're also threatening Bab al-Mandeb?
Well, honestly, I've never heard any American source mention Lebanon. So I have a feeling that is something that the Iranians are doing for their domestic audience. But, look, they betrayed Lebanese Hezbollah when they ordered them into action against the Israelis, knowing that they were not ready to fight. They have really done next to nothing to help out Lebanese Hezbollah, as the Israelis have been pushing in areas that they haven't occupied since almost 20 years. And, they'll betray them again when their interests are greater. I mean, Iran, if you go back 3 years, Iran was saying that Hamas was a critical part of the axis of resistance, which Lebanese Hezbollah is. They haven't mentioned Hamas. So, they've betrayed Hamas. They will betray, again, Lebanese Hezbollah. The bottom line is these Arab elements of the axis of resistance exist to serve Iranian interests. The Iranians do not compromise on their interests just for the sake of their Arab subordinates.
I want to come to that point because you mentioned Arabs. Considering the fact that the deal is done, how do you see any change in the region, in the diplomacy or militarily? Do you see any change after a deal is done?
Well, yeah. I mean, first off, the attitude of many of the Gulf states, there's really two camps. There's people in the Gulf, there's people in Levant. The attitude of the Gulf states had been that Iran was a troublesome neighbor, but that they had to find a way to deal with it. It was sort of like the attitude of some German politicians towards the Soviet Union in the 70s. This idea that we don't like this necessarily, but we got to learn to live with it, so let's make concessions. But the indiscriminate nature and pre-planned nature of the Iranian attacks on the GCC states, I think, have really, there's a tipping point there. The geography is still there. They still have to work with these guys, but, their civilian infrastructure was attacked, and they had denied U.S. access, basing, and overflight. So they are not viewing Iran. It's going to take regime change in Iran and a generation to go back to something like a normal relationship between the Gulf states and Iran. There'll still be interaction, but it will be extremely guarded. When you look at the Levant, what's really interesting here is for the first time you've had direct negotiations between Israel and the Lebanese government. And what that suggests to me is that Israeli military action has so degraded Lebanese Hezbollah that this state within a state is possibly going to be subsumed by the Lebanese government, and that Lebanon may become a sovereign state again. That is a huge change, but it's going to be one that Israel has a hard time dealing with, and even the United States, because we want the Lebanese state to be fully sovereign. We want to get rid of Lebanese Hezbollah that operates lawlessly, and
I hear your point.
But at the same time, we don't want to see Israel attacked or an Israeli incursion opposed by the Lebanese forces. So we have some thinking to do there.
I hear you. Colonel, let me quickly get one more reaction from you. You visit the Gulf region very frequently. You understand the region very well. You've served there. Do you find, or do you foresee U.S. downsizing its West Asia imprint post this war?
No. And by the way, that's another Iranian demand, is that the United States removes from the region. But look, we're there. We didn't have a significant presence there before the Iranian Revolution. And honestly, we didn't have a significant presence before Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. We're there in a reactionary base, and it's at the request there basically to preserve the sovereignty of some very small countries against a rapacious adversary or potential adversary that views the natural order of these states as being subordinate to them. So that relationship will be there. It's a lot smaller. The numbers are smaller than people think, but they're still substantial. And I think our presence, we're not going to negotiate that away. We're there for the long run.
All right. Colonel, thanks so much for joining us here on World DNA. Always a pleasure speaking with you. These next 4 days are going to be very critical, as you pointed out as well. We'll need to wait and watch. There'll be more to discuss. Look forward to having you here with us again.
It's an honor. Thanks for having me.
Well, moving to other global news, 5 people have been killed and 5 others injured in northeastern Ukraine following a Russian strike.
And this as the two countries continue to exchange attacks. Ukraine's interior minister has said that 5 state emergency service rescuers were killed in Kharkiv during firefighting operations after a repeated strike. A Russian drone attack also hit the Kharkiv Art Museum, injuring 6 people, including a child.
Meanwhile, a major missile barrage struck Kiev early Monday. Ukrainian air defenses intercepted several projectiles with debris falling across the city. 6 people were injured and a fire broke out at the Kiev Petresk Lavra Monastery, a historic symbol of Ukraine's spiritual and cultural heritage. Authorities urged residents to remain in shelter amid continued air raid alerts.
Well, in Poland, fighter jets were scrambled and air defense systems put on high alert following the Russian air attacks on Ukraine in what authorities described as a preventive move to secure its airspace near the border.
Kremlin said that President Vladimir Putin held a phone call with U.S. President Donald Trump discussing the wars in Ukraine and Iran. It further added that Trump's envoy are working intensively on Iran and are expected to visit Russia again soon.
Ukrainian President Zelensky has said that he will discuss the ongoing war with President Trump at the G7 summit. He also confirmed that during a phone call, he spoke with Trump about the steps towards ending the conflict.
We agreed to meet. In the coming days in Europe, there will be meetings in the G7 format, and of course, Ukraine, our defense, and our opportunities to achieve peace will be among the main issues.
A skydiving plane crashed in the central U.S. state of Missouri, killing 12 people on board.
Now, the crash occurred near Butler Memorial Airport, about 95 kilometers off the Kansas City. The private plane carrying 11 skydivers and a pilot turned around for an unknown reason after taking off and crashed near a highway.
With nearby Kansas City hosting several football World Cup matches, authorities were quick to underline that they saw nothing or a crime related in this crash.
And, we just want to reassure the public that there's nothing criminal that we can see, nothing terrorism related or anything like that. Those are some of the first questions that we would have with the World Cup being in town. And we just want to make sure that the public knows that they're safe. And this, for all intents and purposes, appears to be an accident.
Sheriff Anderson said he did not know who owned the airplane or the name of the skydiving company or organization involved. The Federal Aviation Administration confirmed the crash and identified the plane as the Pacific Aerospace P750, a single-engine aircraft designed and manufactured in New Zealand. The National Transportation Safety Board will lead the investigation into the crash. All right, moving on. An attack by a suspected terrorist has reportedly killed at least 20 people in northwest Nigeria.
And according to an intelligence report released on Sunday, the attackers belong to a group targeted by the United States in last December airstrikes.
Now, on the attack, the report stated that the terrorists raided the Feskenjafi community in Kebbi State's Arewa district near the border with Niger.
Local reports also suggest that the raid occurred a few days ago. However, it was only reported over the weekend after the Kebbi State Deputy Governor visited the area. The motive of the latest attack remains unclear. According to the security report prepared for the United Nations, the attack suggests a resurgence of violence by the Lakurawa terrorist group after a lull in the past months.
The U.S. military struck parts of northwestern Nigeria on 25th of December. The Nigerian government said that the U.S. attack targeted Islamic State group fighters. The number of fatalities are unknown. However, the U.S. claimed the strikes killed a large number of terrorists.
Authorities say in the recent weeks, armed groups have been kidnapping and attacking farmers who refuse to pay extortion fees in parts of Nigeria. The group in question has remained active in communities along the Nigeria-Niger border despite security efforts to push them out.
All right, it's time to slip into a very short break on World DNA. And then before we slip into the break, here are some images that have been making powerful impact from across the world. We'll be right back with World DNA on the other side.
Modi and Trump face-to-face at G7. The famous personal chemistry will be on test.
You're smart.
The red lines and trade reset will be under scrutiny. The high-stakes meet at G7. Watch the body language, the breakthroughs, as the world's two most powerful leaders meet.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
Iran and Ukraine loom over G7 as France looks to rekindle the original spirit of G7. Future looks increasingly uncertain for the international order. International economy becoming a space for confrontation. Can the summit bridge the divide between the allies and Trump? Will this G7 be a defining moment for the middle powers?
In this rapidly changing world, is your health keeping pace? Best practices and breakthroughs busting the hype with real insights. The timeless power of yoga and ancient healing. Good food, good mood. Small steps, big impact. Your health matters. Only on WION World is One. Because nothing matters more.
The Israeli drone is above our heads all the time in Lebanon. Around 169 buildings have been totally reduced to rubble. Every time there's a warning, they just come to this public area where there are around 200 tents and they reside for a while and then they go back to their home. Some of the Lebanese people enjoying their time, celebrating, singing, dancing, and some others forcibly displaced. From the southern suburb of Beirut, I'm Radi Francis for WION World is One.
Welcome back. You're watching World DNA with Jyotsna. I'm Shivan. Let's start with the headlines at this hour.
The United States and Iran agreed to a peace deal and an immediate and permanent end to military operations on all fronts, including Lebanon. An official signing ceremony is scheduled for 19th of June in Geneva.
Iranian media claims that the US will release $12 billion in frozen assets to Iran before the start of the negotiations. The document published by Mehr news agency stipulates release of $24 billion in frozen assets during the 60-day negotiation period after the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding on the 19th of June.
President Donald Trump says the U.S. has achieved peace with Iran, announcing the lifting of naval blockade on Iranian ports. Claims that the agreement will ultimately ensure that the Strait of Hormuz is permanently toll-free.
President Donald Trump takes a swipe at Benjamin Netanyahu, saying the Israeli Prime Minister should be grateful for the administration's diplomacy. In a phone interview with the New York Times, Trump calls Netanyahu a difficult guy, adding that Israel stands to benefit from this agreement.
Asian markets rally Monday after U.S. and Iran announced a peace deal. Japan's Nikkei and South Korea's Kospi surged more than 4%, while Hong Kong and Australian markets surged around 1%. Falling oil prices and stronger U.S. stock futures boost investor sentiment.
Iran's football team arrived in U.S. hours after the announcement of a peace agreement. The squad landed in Los Angeles after flying from Mexico, a day ahead of their World Cup opener against New Zealand.
Democratic Republic of Congo says number of confirmed Ebola cases in the country has increased to 782 after 72 new cases were documented in single day. The confirmed Ebola cases include 181 deaths.
President Donald Trump celebrates his 80th birthday with a cage fight on the White House lawn. Trump and UFC chief Dana White walked together from the Oval Office as fighter jets streaked overhead.
Missiles intercepted over Kiev as major attack targets the Ukrainian capital. Mayor says 6 people wounded while a cathedral in the famed Orthodox complex caught fire after Russian strikes. Russian strikes in Kharkiv killed 5 rescue workers.
Prime Minister Modi arrives in Slovakia for the second leg of his 3-nation European tour, marking the first visit by an Indian Prime Minister to the country since it gained independence in 1993.
Germany thrashed World Cup debutants Curaçao 7-1 in their opener. Curaçao, the least populated nation ever to qualify for the tournament, made a bright start in Houston with an early equalizer, but were soon outclassed by 4-time winners.
Prime Minister Modi has arrived in Slovakia. This is for a historic two-day visit.
And this is the first ever by an Indian Prime Minister. And during his visit, PM Modi will meet Slovakian President Peter Pellegrini and hold talks with Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico.
Upon his arrival in the Slovakian capital, Bratislava, Prime Minister Modi was accorded a traditional welcome with bread and salt. In Slovak culture, bread and salt is a symbol of hospitality, respect and goodwill.
Modi then witnessed a spiritual performance by the Slovakian musical group.
PM Modi also received a warm welcome with a rendition of Vande Mataram. The group had performed the Indian national anthem during the visit of President Draupadi Murmu in 2025.
Members of the Indian diaspora turned out in large numbers to welcome the Prime Minister.
Well, the state visit follows a series of high-level exchanges between the two countries. Last year, President Draupadi Murmu had visited Slovakia, while Slovak President Pellegrini had visited India earlier this year for the AI Impact Summit. Modi's visit is expected to focus on strengthening partnerships across automobile manufacturing, railway development and economic cooperation.
The Slovakia visit is the second leg of PM Modi's Europe tour. Earlier, he concluded his engagements in France, where he held bilateral talks with French President Emmanuel Macron.
Now, according to an official release, the two leaders discussed ways to enhance cooperation in civil nuclear energy, human spaceflight, SME, aviation and railway sectors. An agreement has also been reached to establish a Centre of Excellence in Aeronautics in Kanpur. Prime Minister Modi also invited French universities to open campuses in India under the new education policy.
Now, following his engagements in Slovakia, PM Modi will head to France again to attend the G7 summit in Evian on 16th and 17th of June. Now, during his summit, PM Modi is likely to meet U.S. President Donald Trump on the sidelines and exchange views with other G7 leaders. Now, Indian Parliament is witnessing a major political shake-up.
Rebel members of parliament from the Trinamool Congress have announced their merger with a little-known regional political outfit, the Nationalist Citizens Party.
Now, after meeting Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla in New Delhi, Rebel MP Kakuli Ghosh said that 20 TMC members of the parliament, which constitute two-thirds of the party's total MPs, have decided to merge with the Nationalist Citizens Party. And she said all 20 members of the parliament will now support the ruling NDA bloc.
सांसद है हम 20 अभी नेशनलिस्ट सिटीजन पार्टी के साथ हम लोग मर्ज करके एनडीए के साथ काम करेंगे प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी के हमारे अमित शाह जी के नेतृत्व में.
A little earlier than this, the rebel TMC members of parliament met Union Minister and BJP leader Bhupendra Yadav. The latest name to join the list of TMC rebels is Sudhip Bandyopadhyay, a close aide of the TMC chief, Mamata Banerjee.
TMC General Secretary Abhishek Banerjee wrote a letter to Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla asking him not to recognize the rebel group as a separate faction of the TMC.
The Trinamool Congress is facing a deepening political crisis following its defeat in the recently held West Bengal Assembly elections. In just over a month, 20 members of the lower house, 3 members of the upper house and 58 MLAs under the leadership of Ritabrata Banerjee have openly rebelled against the party.
The TMC split has effectively changed the numbers game in both houses of parliament. In the lower house, the ruling NDA strength has risen from 293 to 313 members. The upper house, the BJP-led NDA, could cross two-thirds majority mark if it secures all 3 seats vacated by the TMC MPs.
Rescue teams in Yemen mounted a challenging recovery operation after a famed adventurer known as the Spider-Man of Yemen fell into a volcanic crater.
Well, divers later located his body deep beneath the water surface at approximately 100 feet. Here's a report on it. Take a look.
Global stocks extended their gains from last week after Wall Street ended Friday modestly higher as shares of SpaceX soared in a stellar market debut.
And this while oil prices fell more than 6% on fresh hopes for a peace deal between Iran and the U.S. Well, now that's happened. No, stocks had reversed declines from earlier in the week and rallied sharply on Thursday after Trump called off attacks on Iran and had announced the 2 countries were close to a deal to end their 3-month-old war. Now, analysts expect more of the same this week with a new deal framework now in place.
Well, on Friday, Brent crude fell to the lowest since March, crashing over 3% for the week as traders grew more confident about a peace agreement between the US and Iran. Brent settled below $87 per barrel, marking a 6% loss for the week. Gold's record rally faltered again late in the week as bulls run into higher interest rate bets in the US. In risk assets, cryptos ended the week higher, with Bitcoin ending above $64,000, marking a weekly gain of 5.5%. Still, the top token has erased over $1 trillion in market value since hitting a record high of more than $126,000 in October last year.
Now with major assets covered, let's shift focus to the Asia-Pacific stock markets. Regional equity benchmarks extended gains from last week after having closed broadly higher. Last week, Australia led gains up 2.1%. India's Sensex surged 1.7%. Japan's Nikkei added nearly 1%. Shanghai just about edged up to close slightly in the green. China's minimal move signals persistent domestic caution, while the rest of the region bets on easing trade tensions.
In the Americas, SpaceX's landmark market debut injected fresh risk appetite across the region. Investors are buying growth, capital is moving, and the mood is bullish. The SpaceX IPO was a bigger boost for stocks on Friday than the prospect of an Iran deal. And that is largely because Trump has repeatedly said that a deal with Iran was close since mid-March, weeks into the battle, with no clear agreement yet. The S&P 500 ended last week with 0.6% gains. Nasdaq added 0.7%, but Canada's TSX surged 1.5% and Brazil's Bovespa jumped 1.3%, outpacing Wall Street.
Looking across the Atlantic, UK's benchmark gained 1%. France's main stock index jumped 1.6%. South Africa's benchmark rose 1.3%, but Germany's stock index slipped 0.5%, suggesting that Eurozone's industrial engine is stalling. Berlin's economic drag signals deeper structural stress. Paris and London diverge from Frankfurt. Emerging market appetite remains firm, with the cracks in Europe widening. And most of associate social media with spending more time on our phones.
But in Paris, it's helping people put their phones down and pick up a fishing rod. The trend is attracting a new generation of anglers and giving an age-old hobby a high-tech twist. More in this next report.
Social media is helping turn an age-old hobby into a new urban trend in Paris. A growing number of people are taking up what is known as street fishing, casting lines into the Seine River in the heart of the French capital. The trend has been fueled by online communities on Instagram and TikTok, where anglers share photos, videos, and compete to show off their latest catches. For many of these anglers, street fishing is a chance to escape screens while still participating in an online culture. Fishermen can now be found across Paris, including near the Eiffel Tower, Notre Dame Cathedral, and the Alexandre III Bridge. The practice follows a catch-and-release approach, where fish are returned to the water after being caught. While the experience takes place outdoors, its growth is being driven by digital platforms where thousands of posts document life along the riverbanks. Technology is also changing how some people fish. In the western suburbs of Paris, entrepreneur Leo Lelievre has turned his passion for angling into a business. His company offers guided fishing trips on the Seine, using advanced sonar equipment to help clients find fish. The boats are fitted with live scope technology, which creates real-time underwater images on a screen. The system allows users to track fish movements, observe their behavior, and even learn to identify different species below the surface. Modern anglers now have access to sonar systems, digital mapping tools, and in some cases AI-powered software designed to analyze conditions and improve the chances of a catch. Though some old-school fishermen argue that high-tech tools remove the surprise element from the experience, the trend is also facing scrutiny from animal rights campaigners, who argue that even catch-and-release fishing can cause harm to animals. Some anglers also leave litter or abandoned gear along riverbanks, but despite the debate, street fishing continues to grow in popularity in Paris.
Indian actor Amir Khan's monumental film Lagan Once Upon a Time in India completes 25 years today.
Let's take a look at how the movie shaped Khan's career ever after that. 25 years ago, the Indian film industry looked at a 4-hour script about colonial taxes and a high-stakes cricket match, and collectively decided that it was box office poison. No established producer wanted to touch it, and they wouldn't touch Ashutosh Gowarekar's Lagan. But Amir Khan, who was then a traditional 90s star, stepped up to bankroll this massive project himself, gambling his entire career on a fictional village called Champaner. As the epic marks its 25th anniversary this June, it is impossible to separate the legacy of the film from the birth of brand Amir.
Now, the decision to play Bhuvan didn't just give Indian cinema its most iconic underdog, it forced Khan into Bollywood's resident Mr. Perfectionist, altering his career trajectory and the industry's rulebook forever. To bring Lagan to life, Khan implemented professional practices that were almost unheard of in Mumbai at the time.
He dedicated himself solely to this one project, introduced live sync sound recording, and even moved the entire cast and crew to the deserts of Kutch for a grueling 6-month single schedule shoot to convincingly play villagers mastering a foreign sport. Khan forced himself and his co-stars into intense cricketing boot camps when the film ultimately became a historic blockbuster and secured India's 3rd ever Academy Award nomination. It completely validated his obsessive attention to detail. Additionally, it was also the moment when top producers started taking notes from Amir Khan, the then fledgling producer. From that point on, Khan never looked back. The exact blueprint he created on the dusty plains of Gujarat became his standard operating procedure.
He stopped attending award shows, drastically reduced his output to one meticulously crafted film at a time, and began choosing scripts that challenged societal norms, paving the way for monumental future triumphs like Rang De Basanti, 3 Idiots, and Dangal.
Well, Lagan is a story about defeating a powerful empire by playing their own game better than they do. 25 years later, it still stands as the precise moment that Amir Khan rejected the established Bollywood formula, played by his own rules, and transformed from a mere superstar into a cinematic institution. And Japan scored an 89th minute equalizer as they twice fought back to rescue a 2-all draw with the Netherlands in Texas to open their World Cup campaigns.
Well, it was a game of two halves as all the goals came in a pulsating second period after cagey first 45 minutes. Liverpool talisman and Netherlands skipper Virgil van Dijk scored the opener, rising to plant a well-placed header into the bottom corner after a pinpoint cross from his club teammate Ryan Gravenberch.
Well, the lead lasted just 6 minutes. Japan struck back with Kito Nakamura firing low past the goalkeeper and helped by a deflection. Dutch winger Somerville then circled and then curled a finish into the bottom corner just after the hour to restore the lead.
The Dutch looked like they would hold on, but Japan leveled at the death with Crystal Palace midfielder Daichi Kamada credited with the goal after a deflection. Japan and the Netherlands are missing key players through injury, but on paper, this was still one of the most attractive fixtures in the group stage. It was helped by a clash of styles. Both teams were equally capable of playing with or without the ball, switching dominance throughout the match. And Japan's late equalizer ensured that this was the best match of the World Cup so far.
For Japanese supporters, holding the strong Dutch to a draw felt like a job well done. The mood was rather gloomier in the Dutch camp, where some fans even branded it among the team's worst displays.
I think it's one of the most terrible games of the Netherlands. I think we almost got 2 chances and 2 goals, and no more.
It's awesome, you know. Because Netherlands is very strong team, but we could catch up, to enter the entire game. So it was excellent.
It was a good game from Japan. It was a good game from Netherlands. I think it was fair.
It was a competitive game.
It was probably the best game so far from the World Cup.
Yeah.
Well, as FIFA World Cup fever sweeps across North America, the city of Boston has scored a record of its own.
The U.S. host city has unveiled the world's largest soccer ball, setting a new Guinness World Record just as the global tournament gets underway. The soccer ball stands 47 feet tall, weighing more than 2,200 pounds. The massive structure breaks the previous record, which was set in Doha more than a decade ago. City officials say that the record-breaking display is part of Boston's celebration of the FIFA World Cup 2026.
Go big or go home in Boston, right? So I am so honored to be here. This is, I believe, Boston's first world record in at least quite some time. And it's perfect timing that when we're welcoming the world to Boston, there's one more exciting thing to see in East Boston and in our city.
The record was confirmed at a special ceremony hosted by Massport and local leaders. Officials say the oversized football reflects Boston's ambition to make a big impression during the tournament.
This is the latest feather in our cap. Certainly the first Guinness World Book of Records I've been able to be privileged to be a part of. But it's fitting that we're having this event here in East Boston with the world's largest soccer ball because, in this community, we've always been known for having big achievements. And that is a beautiful thing. And this is, again, the latest in a long line of illustrious accomplishments that we've been able to deliver.
And Boston is one of the host cities for the expanded FIFA World Cup this year, the largest edition in the tournament's history. For the first time, 48 national teams are competing for football's biggest prize. The tournament is being co-hosted by the United States, Canada and Mexico. 7 World Cup matches are scheduled to be played at Boston Stadium, including group stage fixtures and knockout games. And with fans arriving from across the globe, the city is hoping that its record-breaking footfall will become one of the tournament's most popular attractions.
All right, with that, we call a wrap. Just a reminder for our viewers in India that you can watch all 2026 FIFA World Cup matches on Z5. Tune in and catch all the action. With that, we call a wrap to World DNA News and Updates. We'll be following on the other side of a very short break. Don't go anywhere.
Get the latest updates.
Destroy their
Breaking
missiles
news.
and raise their...
Credible, clear, continuous. Experts across aisles. Diverse voices, one platform. WION World is one.
Modi and Trump face to face at G7. The famous personal chemistry will be on test.
You're smart.
The red lines and trade reset will be under scrutiny. The high-stakes meet at G7. Watch the body language, the breakthroughs, as the world's two most powerful leaders meet.
It's turned out to be the most successful World Cup from the standpoint of what's happening.
The FIFA World Cup is being co-hosted by the United States, Canada, and Mexico and kicks off on June 11th. For the first time in history, the tournament expands to 48 teams playing a record 104 matches.
Get all the updates from the 2026 FIFA World Cup only on WION.
Iran and Ukraine loom over G7 as France looks to rekindle the original spirit of G7. Future looks increasingly uncertain for the international order. International economy becoming a space for confrontation. Can the summit bridge the divide between the allies and Trump? Will this G7 be a defining moment for the middle powers?
In West Asia, every move shifts the world's balance. Wars, ceasefires, alliances, power never stands still. From Tehran to Tel Aviv, from Damascus to Doha, the West Asia Post cuts through the chaos to reveal the region that shapes the world. Because what happens in West Asia never stays in West Asia. This is the West Asia Post, the region's story, the world's impact.
Thanks for staying with us. You're watching WION World is One. I'm Adha Juneja and this is Speed News. Let's start with all the stories making headlines today. The US and Iran have agreed to a peace deal which will end military operations on all fronts, including Lebanon. The initial announcement from mediator Pakistan was quickly confirmed by Washington and Tehran. In an official signing ceremony that is scheduled for June 19th in Switzerland, while in a post on Donald Trump's Truth Social network, he said the Strait of Hormuz would reopen, US naval blockade would be removed after the planned signing of the deal on Friday, apparently contradicting an earlier statement that the crucial waterway would open immediately. Iran said that the newly announced agreement with the US puts an immediate end to the country's war. Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Kazim Garibabadi, in televised comments, said that negotiations for a final deal will be held during a 60-day period, adding that Tehran would take its own measures in case of breaches from the other side. The content of the agreement remains unclear. Iran's Mehr news agency reported that the US will release $12 billion in frozen assets to Iran before the start of negotiations. It quoted a 14-point memorandum of understanding between the two nations, which it said stipulates the release of $24 billion in frozen Iranian assets during the 60-day negotiation period that begins after the MOU is signed. US Vice President J.D. Vance hailed a new agreement with Iran as a big moment for the United States of America that would eliminate Tehran's nuclear threat. In an interview on Fox News Channel's The Big Weekend Show, Vance stated that if the terms of the deal are met, it is going to fundamentally transform the West Asia for the next 50 years by ending conflict and lowering energy prices for the American people. E4 nations, including the United Kingdom, France, Germany and Italy, said the countries were prepared to lift sanctions on Iran in response to steps on its nuclear program after the US and Iran reached a deal to end the war. Well, the leaders of the countries said in a joint statement, and I quote, "Iran must never acquire a nuclear weapon. We stand ready to work with the US, Iran and the IAEA to this end." End of quote. A fragile ceasefire is under fresh strain in Lebanon. Israel has issued evacuation orders for 29 villages in the south and launched strikes in Beirut's southern suburbs, in which Lebanon's civil defense says 3 people have been killed in those strikes after accusing Hezbollah of firing projectiles into northern Israel. The latest escalation comes at a very sensitive moment, with regional powers pushing for a broader diplomatic settlement. Amid uncertainty over the Iran peace deal and a fragile ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon,